Hello and welcome to Disrupt and Grow, a special insight into what CEOs across India and the globe are thinking and what the game plan is to counter a rapidly changing and challenging environment. Joining me today is Mr. Arun Kumar. He's Chairman and CEO of KPMG in India. KPMG has just concluded a mega CEO survey. They've interviewed over 1,200 CEOs globally and 130 CEOs in India, covering all possible sectors. Mr. Kumar, thanks very much for your time, sir. Great to have you here and great to have the report and so much knowledge in it, sir. Let me start with a very basic but a very pertinent question. The report highlights that confidence of CEOs in growth is still high, but it is lower than what it was last year. Could you start there?
The confidence of CEOs in India is very high, and 90% of CEOs that we surveyed, 130 CEOs, reflected high confidence in the growth prospects. It was down a couple of points from 92% last year, but still 90% is a pretty solid number. So I think that the indication would be that 90% of significant companies feel that they have strong growth prospects in the years ahead.
Do you feel that the drop which has happened is still very high? It's related to things like demonetization and some of these things which have happened in the recent past?
You know,
it's very immediate. I mean, there's nothing really which has changed in the longer term.
There was another data point which said that their confidence in the growth prospects of the Indian economy, that had actually dropped from 86% to 82%. That's a bit more of a significant drop than the first one. That may have to do with the speed bumps last year on demonetization, but in general, I think that's been discounted out looking forward.
So when, you put these questions to CEOs, is it essentially growth this year, as they see it? This is 2017, or, growth in 2017 and beyond?
It's like a 3-year outlook that we're looking for.
Okay. So in that sense, growth in their outlook and confidence for growth in India has dropped by 400 basis points, on an aggregate basis.
In a broad sense, I would say that 82% showed confidence in the growth of the Indian economy compared to 86% last year, but 90% showed confidence that their companies would grow.
Okay.
But overall, I think it's a positive picture.
It is positive. Over 80% still.
It's definitely positive.
So I think that is, can't
more
argue
than 4
with that.
out of 5.
What was the feedback really in terms of these speed bumps like demonetization, GST, which has been rolled out now? It's still very early days. But what did companies really tell you there?
Well, the survey did not specifically ask about these particular topics. But I've been in the country 5 months since I took on this role, and I've met with over 100 CEOs. And I think demonetization had a temporary effect on some companies, but they're beyond that. GST, we're right into the throes of it. Our firm is working with hundreds of companies around the country to get them ready for GST. And the first couple of weeks, there was a bit of a pause as people were working with invoicing systems and inventories. But we're pretty confident that we'll be over that in the next couple of months. So that is generally prepared.
That is the speed bump, or the damage these things can do in the near term, and they see it as very near term kind of impacts, right? Which should smoothen out over a longer period of time. But to put it differently, do they see upside because of these two events?
I think GST is a very minor bump in the road, very minor, 1 or 2 weeks. So I wouldn't put too much emphasis on that. But longer term, GST creates an open market in India for the first time, which is a very important reform. I think companies are very, very enthusiastic about this big reform that's happening. It's been, as you know, it's been long in coming. Both domestic companies and foreign companies welcome this development.
Even the 5 rates, the fact that it's not ideal, it's
certainly not ideal. There have been compromises, but I think that's what democracy is made of. I think people understand that it's a compromise.
But across the board, in your meetings over the last 5 months that you've been here in this role and in this survey, the feedback is that this is much better than the system that we had so far, even with all its faults and shortcomings.
Absolutely, because the logistics improvements will be enormous. That's where the real payback is.
What about demonetization, just to go back to that one?
Because demonetization now, I think, is a distant
in terms of upside, because of that, digital economy.
Well, in terms of upside, there were some interesting consequences, like the increasing digitization of payments, which is a big transformation. So that's one of the upsides we saw from demonetization. People are expecting other upsides from demonetization, like like reduction in black money and so forth.
And that's showing up in businesses? I mean, in how businesses conduct their affairs and how they approach the marketplace, really?
It's probably too early to say that. All we can say at this point is that the speed bump that we hit on demonetization is now past, and we're back to business.
Fair enough. I mean, the stock markets, financial markets have been doing very well, not just here, but around the world. And that we've also, along with it, seen lots of acquisitions, M&A, buyouts, etc., etc. Some of it is purely finance-driven. Some of it is strategic. I mean, could you just talk a little bit about that, what you found?
I would say a lot of it is strategic because of the new demands today in the economy, whether it is customer preferences changing with millennials, whether it's digital technologies of all kinds, whether it's regulatory changes, whether it's protectionist sentiments affecting business with various economies. All these have really resulted in a need to look at new opportunities, new business models, new skill sets. And more alliances and mergers and acquisitions are going to be the way in which businesses play. Both last year's survey and this year's survey, both of these came out as very important for CEOs. In our own case, we see that alliances can be a very major driver for demand for our services.
Is there any sort of qualitative feedback on mergers and acquisitions? I mean, the CEOs that you spoke with are good candidates for acquisition, M&A, tough to find, too expensive? I mean, just some color there.
I'd say all of the above, but the most important issue would be once it's done, to have successful integration after it's done.
Okay.
Otherwise, you may lose some of the value that you paid.
Okay. So, but the survey shows that they consider M&A as a very important piece in their overall strategy.
I'd say 4 out of 5 CEOs approximately felt that they would do some kind of M&A in the near future.
4 out of 5.
Quite a large number, 18% to be precise.
And that is to sort of gain faster access to market, or
to gain access to markets, to create new products and services, to augment skill sets. So those would be the 3 main drivers.
Fair enough. Just talk to us a little bit about the global uncertainties and what CEOs feel about that. I mean, has a lot has happened on the geopolitical side. I think that comes up in the survey in some areas.
I think it's one area where CEOs were generally kind of caught short over the last 2 years. Like everybody else, people were surprised by what happened with Brexit, surprised by what happened in the United States with the increasing protectionist rhetoric, if you might, that we hear. But all that means that CEOs have to adapt their strategies to cope with the new environment. So that's certainly a new territory for many CEOs. It is not business as usual. There have been these 2 big disruptions that have come along. They need to find those kinds of skills to help them navigate the new environment. And they're reaching out to do that.
But so are we talking about global businesses which kind of sort of get affected by these events in a real way, or there is just a bit of nervousness in terms of
I'd say they get affected. Yeah, I would say both. There's nervousness because you don't know where some of these things will reach. I mean, all of these do have a time span. Brexit has not happened yet.
Yes.
There are many steps to go, but it's looming out there.
We still don't have a trade war. We may have a trade war. I mean,
that's exactly.
Know that.
Same thing in the US. Many things have been said, but not all of it has happened. But that looming threat is something that employees are concerned about, business leaders are concerned about.
And is there any plan to kind of sort of deal with it in a proactive kind of way? Can one do that?
I think CEOs are reacting to that. They're looking at their business models. They're looking at use of technologies, where technologies can be used to overcome some of the limitations. So yes, it's very much top of mind.
Okay.
And it's also there's these geopolitical developments, but also technology itself. The rise of artificial intelligence, cognitive science, all of those really challenge existing business models.
I mean, and you've just returned from the US, and sort of you've looked at businesses there as well. The adaptation to these new technologies, is it at the same pace? I mean, like to like between companies here and some of the companies out there in the US? What's your feedback? What's your sense?
My sense is, and that is shown out in the survey, is that global CEOs are ahead of Indian CEOs in recognizing the importance of some of these technologies. A number of Indian CEOs do recognize them, but they haven't moved as fast as global CEOs, nor do they give it as much importance in general. But there are many companies
is that because the market that they're addressing is not really suited to adapt those kind of technologies, or?
To some extent, it could be that many of the CEOs are focused, an increased domestic focus might mean that they're less concerned about some of these technologies.
Maybe it's also a reflection of the fact that there's still a lot of untapped potential here. I mean, low-hanging fruit in a way.
That's for sure.
Whereas out there in the US, it's about increasing efficiency, getting more bang for the buck in a way.
But even so, technologies like data analytics can be used by all companies.
Sure.
So even though it may be that there's enough opportunity without resorting to some of these technologies, it's really important for CEOs to know what kinds of opportunities do new data analytics approaches present, or cognitive science, or process automation, and so forth.
And these are, this is limited not just to large companies, but across the board, because 130 companies.
That's right. It's very much a cross-section of companies.
Even smaller companies are well attuned to these, some of these
Many
things.
smaller companies are. In fact, often smaller companies can get onto these new technologies faster than big companies. I was just in Israel last week, and I could see how very small companies are at the forefront of each of these areas, whether it's cognitive science or cybersecurity or Internet of Things. The innovation is clearly coming from small companies.
Okay, we'll take a very quick break here. We are in conversation with Mr. Arun Kumar, Chairman and CEO of KPMG. Back in a bit.